Hello, thank you so much for joining us today to take a look at agents in Tines. So this is the latest and greatest capability that we've just added in Tines in terms of what you can build. And today I want to walk you through mostly how it looks in product. I want to take you through how you build these things, whet your appetite for the feature, get your inspiration flowing in terms of what you might build yourselves. And before I get into all that, though, I do want to tell you about the how and the why of what we built. So to briefly introduce myself, I'm Stephen. I lead the product team here at Tines, and let's get straight to it. So I'm going to talk probably for around 10 minutes or so to give you this intro. Then we'll hop into the product and show you exactly what we have. And finally, we're going to have time at the end for questions. So please feel free to pop those questions in, and we'll get there towards the end of the webinar. So whether or not you're watching live, I think we've got a great crowd today. Appreciate you all making time. Or later on the recording, we're very glad to have you and appreciate you being here. All right. So I'm going to start where we always begin, which is our company mission here at Tines. So our mission is to power the world's most important workflows. And this is what we've been obsessed with since the company's inception 7 years ago. Everything we do is in furtherance of this mission. And I think with this new ability to build agents, we're taking the biggest jump, the biggest leap towards it that we ever have. Because with AI agents, I think it changes not just the building of workflows, making it more inclusive and more fluid and something that more people can do, but also the power of the workflows themselves. Now, many of you who are already Tines customers or users, you'll be on teams like security teams or IT teams or other similar operations teams using Tines. But we think about important workflows in general. And I think those teams like IT with onboarding new users or security with securing the organization very obviously have important workflows. But the platform we've been building cares about all sorts of different important workflows. We think important workflows are all alike in a bunch of ways. They have to run very reliably. They have to scale to high throughput. We're running almost 1.5 billion automations a week now at Tines. And in general, I think they deserve paranoia. You need to have top tier privacy and security for important workflows. And that's where we try to be more paranoid even than our very paranoid users. So I want to talk to you about how agents go further, as I said, towards achieving this mission than we have before. And we're going to talk about a lot of changes in the product as a result. But first of all, actually, I want to talk about a few things that have not changed. And what has not changed is our underlying AI infrastructure, how we invoke and use language models. So when we first shipped our AI features over a year ago, we announced this private by design AI infrastructure. And this isn't just some talking points. This is a very clear detail. It means that we run by default all language models entirely inside our infrastructure. It's very important from a privacy point of view because it means that your data never leaves the infrastructure, never travels on the public internet, is never logged outside of your purview. It's never used for cross-training. And so this remains true with our launch of agents, and it will remain true for any future AI features that we ship. So private by design remains. And again, this is the sort of thing that you have to be obsessive about when your mission is to power the world's most important workflows. Important workflows deserve this kind of privacy. Another thing that's not changing, though, is that we offer AI on your terms. Simply put, we're not here to resell AI models. Yes, we offer our built-in private AI infrastructure by default. We think it's a great default. We think it gives our customers peace of mind. But many of our customers, and increasing numbers of them, in fact, are bringing their own AI models to Tines. So again, no change here. You can bring your own AI models to power agents in Tines, and we will keep this infrastructure and this choice for all future AI features we build as well. Okay, so to kick us off, I really wanted to outline the fact that this is being built on top of that foundation we've already established. But now let's talk about what's changing. And a lot of the changes, I think, can be seen in one small labeling, right? So we've had our AI action for quite a while. It was one of the first AI features we shipped, and it let you invoke a large language model at any point in an automated workflow. A hugely successful feature. Tons of our customers use this. it has evolved as part of this launch to become the AI agent action. And that's not just a relabeling. It's not just a new name. It implies a different sort of capability, a much broader, much deeper, much more powerful capability. So this is kind of the tip of the iceberg. This is the first thing you'll see differently in the product. Before I actually tell you what it is and what those changes are, I want to focus on this word, agent. Agents is, I think, the biggest word in technology in 2025. Seemingly every launch I see is an agent for X or an agent for Y. And we wanted to ship something a little bit different. We wanted to ship the ability to build agents of any sort. But perhaps we need to define, first of all, what is an agent? Okay, so what is an AI agent? This is a surprisingly hard question to answer. There was a Twitter thread I enjoyed late last year. Here it was, from Simon Willison, quite well known in the Python and AI communities. And he asked, can we see if we can crowdsource a robust definition of what an agent is? Reply with your best attempt, and then, upvote the ones that make the most sense. This was a pretty big tweet. It got hundreds and hundreds of replies. And everybody who gave a definition for what an AI agent was seemed fairly sure that theirs was obviously correct. And yet all the answers were different. So that tells you that really when you ask people to nail down what they mean, even those in the community, those in the know, they really struggle to put a clear definition on it. But you can find some definitions. Here's one I like from our friends at Anthropic. This was from a conference talk of theirs. Agents are models using tools in a loop. And I think this is a nice, minimal, concise, and correct definition of the technical ingredients of an agent. But maybe there's more to the story than that. Here's another example. This is from a blog post just this week from Will Larson. He is CTO over at Imprint. And Will had a great argument for the capabilities of agents, including these 4 sort of definitional points, which are quite technical. And I think, again, a strong case to be made for them. Others will adopt a more illustrative definition, like this one, a digital worker. That's what an AI agent is. And this maybe implies that AI agents could join teams and carry out roles on company teams. It kind of hints at a future there. Another tweet, this is from Martin Casado at A16Z, and he detailed 3 totally competing definitions he hears. The first is something anthropomorphic, which acts a little bit like a human. Other things involving multiple steps or a control loop. So again, differing definitions even within that one message. And finally, some people just give up on trying to be too precise and say, well, an agent is anything that is built using large language models. And I actually think this is a pretty respectable definition as well, because it is hard to pin down exactly what we mean. We also threw our hat in the ring. This is a blog post of mine a couple of months ago, where we detailed an internal litmus test we use. So a very objective definition for our purposes on whether or not something is an AI agent. We didn't claim this was the perfect definition for everybody, but it was at least an objective effort. Okay, so I'm not going to put any more examples on the slide, but I think you get the point. It's hard to specifically say. So if we're introducing the capability of building these things, surely we have to decide which one we mean. And the answer is actually that we disagree. We don't have to define it exactly, because what we want to do is support you building whatever AI agents you want. So if it's something that acts like a team member and it's a little bit personified and it can chat with users on Slack or on a web page, we want you to be able to build that. If it's a digital worker that works behind the scenes on automation and can use tools or conduct research, we want to enable you to build that. So that was our driving motivation. We wanted to allow you to build AI agents of any kind, of any type, of any definition in Tines. We didn't want to be too prescriptive or too pedantic. And this called for, obviously, a very flexible toolkit. All right, and that fits with, I think, in general, our mission at Tines, right? Because we want to give you this flexible toolkit to model whatever workflow that you're trying to power for your organization. Okay, so we set off to solve for this. And quite quickly, we realized we had a dilemma. And our dilemma was a choice, a fork in the road. Do we start afresh, or do we build this into our platform's core? And what I mean by this is that agentic automation, or agents, it felt like such a new thing that maybe it would call for an entirely fresh start. in our product. Maybe it should even be its own brand new product. On the other hand, there's so much in our platform, and maybe AI agents would need a lot of that stuff too. So this was the fork in the road, and we deeply considered both sides of the argument. So to answer how we ended up where we are, let's think about our platform. And you can consider Tines as being composed of a number of layers. The first layer is your actual company systems and data, or your organization systems and data, which is paramount, right? We have to access these in order to be able to do anything. Now, the only way that fantastic organizations will trust us to have access to these systems and data is if we have a very credible control layer, right? So do we have controls over how we store the credentials that access that data? Do we have controls over the automations people will build? So then there's the automations themselves, which can automate those systems and data. And finally, there's interactions between the automations you build in Tines and humans, whether those are humans in the loop for automation, whether those are privileged team members in case management, or even end users. And as we were thinking about agents, we realized each of these layers is still relevant for the same reasons, right? Agents need to interface with your company systems and data, obviously. AI agents definitely need to be kept under control, right? The last thing we want is these things running rogue in some way. AI agents are a form of automation, right? They automate things. Computers can now do more. And AI agents still need to interact with humans in various degrees and contexts. So I'm going to flip these on their side now, and I'm going to talk about how our platform looks today with the agents launch in its entirety. And I won't go through every word on this slide in detail, but this is it. This is what we have been building for the last 7 years in pursuing our mission. And I think the control layer is really, really important. This is where a lot of that paranoia that I mentioned lives. It's what enables great organizations to trust us. So just like traditional or deterministic automation needs everything on this page, again, from interacting with humans to accessing company systems and data, the same is true for agentic automation. All right. So that became our view. Agents are very exciting, but they are a form of automation. They're a new kind of automation. And as such, they exist at the automation layer in Tines. And over time, it actually became clear that not only do agents still need all this stuff on the slide, they also need deterministic automation. So it's sort of a false idea that you have deterministic or agentic, right? The real magic is when you combine the two. And the point there is that AIs still need to have consistency at times. So when an agent is taking an action, you may want that to happen in a very procedural and precise way. And that's what deterministic automation is all about. Okay, so I'm telling you that agents live here in the very core of the product, in the automation layer, which is the central piece of what we build. And for anybody here today who is a existing Tines user, you will know that the center of the product, the center of the automation piece of the product is our diagram. And that's where agents are built in Tines. They're woven right into the core of the product on that automation diagram. They're not bolted on. They're not a new product or feature to the side. They're right there in the mix. And again, that's because they need our platform, and they also need to interoperate with deterministic automation elements. So here, for example, in this little sketch, we've got a webhook that's kicking off a workflow. And this is a piece of deterministic automation, right? It will receive web requests completely consistently. And then it's passing to an AI agent, which is going to take over and do some triage. Okay. You can start to see how these things work even from this picture. So there's a few tools here inside this agent. And that's how agents work. They use tools and they reason, right? They reason and use tools to achieve an objective. And this is what that reasoning chain can look like. An agent might think, it might express an idea, it might use a tool, get back some result from that tool usage, and it goes on and on and on until it has achieved that objective, whether that's taking an action or reaching a determination. And the last thing I want to tease is, I mentioned earlier, we want to give you the ability to build all sorts of different agents, whatever you can dream up. And as a result, we have these two modes of how agents can run in Tines. And the first is what I was hinting at with this triage agent, where it will have an internal monologue thinking to itself in order to achieve that objective. But you can also surface agents to your end users. So just like Times Pages, you can have a URL that an end user can access and actually be in the conversation. So the internal monologue becomes a dialogue. You'll see me refer to these as task agents and these as chat agents. Okay, so that's a lot of teasing and a little bit of philosophy on why we took the route we did. But I think now we really should jump in and look at the product for real. I'm actually going to start here on the diagram, looking at a conventional Times workflow. So this is a story for phishing analysis. And phishing is one of those classic Times use cases we've been doing for a very long time for security teams. I'm going to zoom out here. This workflow receives an email in an inbox, and then it processes that email, parses it, uses services like email rep, URL scan, and virus total to get to the bottom of whether or not this is a phishing example and what the next step should be. So let me zoom out fully. And this is what real production workflows in Times can look like. If I select all, you'll see that there's 113 steps here, 113 actions. And this is a very, very good workflow. It's got really clear kind of step-by-step annotations. It's neat and tidy, but you can imagine that this would have taken quite a lot of work to build. And the truth of this is that you don't just get to, think through exactly what you need in your phishing workflow and put everything on the page at once. This had to be sort of uncovered and learned over time. So perhaps a customer will start small and then encounter a few interesting edge cases, and then over time, iterate and improve the workflow to handle those. And that, by the way, is one of the reasons that asking an AI to build the workflow, although slightly possible, we have some features for this, it doesn't tend to work that well because the AI also can't predict the future. It can't think about the requirements that you didn't tell it. If I zoom in over here on the left, you'll see that there's a literal edge case on the edge, right? What do we do if the IPs are not found in the headers? And again, this is often what you're doing with deterministic automation. You're discovering what all the edge cases are, and you're coming up with solutions for them. Okay, so this is, again, not the new product. This is the traditional Times deterministic workflow product. And I think there's no reason to change this phishing workflow. I think if you're a customer and you've got something like this up and running, fantastic. This isn't the most obvious candidate for an agentic replacement, but that's exactly what I want to do. I want to, as a challenge, I want to see what it would look like to rebuild this, going all in on agents. And again, probably the correct way to do it is somewhere in between, but just to show you the ropes of this feature, I'm going to try and rebuild this right now with the new feature. Okay, so let's head over here to this blank canvas. And all I've got here are two starting points where we're going to receive emails. And these are the emails we'll want to analyze to see if they're phishing. I'm receiving one via a webhook, or I can receive it via an email inbox. So here's that new label I mentioned, AI agent. So to build our AI agent, I'm going to drag and drop this new element onto the diagram. The first thing it'll ask me is whether I want a task agent or a chat agent. The task is the inner monologue as I think about it. The chat is a dialogue with an end user. So there's no user that we want to chat to here, so it's a task. Okay, now I have a few things to fill out. I need to give this agent some configuration. I'll give it a name. Let's call it phishing agent. I'm going to give it some system instructions. You can see an example of what this means here. It's the guidelines or rules or constraints, the identity of what the agent is. And then we give it a prompt. This is the current task that we want it to solve. So here, I will give this very, very basic instructions. I'm going to say, analyze incoming emails for security threats. Use enrichment tools for your analysis. Then document, and I'll ask for a few things. Your findings, any IOCs, indicators of compromise, and recommendations or next steps. Okay, so think of this as like the world's most basic phishing runbook. And the only other thing we need to give it now, well, I need to connect it up to these upstream actions. So let me do that. And then I need to give it a specific task. So here, all I'm going to give it is the email data. It has enough in its systems instructions to understand its role. So here, I'm going to just give it I'll reference the upstream data in receive email. And just for some formatting, I'm going to wrap this in some backticks. This is just a way to display a little bit nicer later in the demo. All right, we've configured the general instructions for our agent. And now the interesting part is that it needs to have tools. This is the key piece for agents and the key new detail really for what we've shipped. So let's see what these tools are. I mentioned in the previous traditional example that we use tools like email rep. So let's go ahead and add that. This is a template in Tines, and it can be used now as a tool for the agent. I think we're also using virus total from memory. So let's pick virus total. And let's give this, what do I want from virus total? Let's do get a report. So let's do get a domain report, get a file report, and get an IP address report. Okay, good. I'm going to additionally and finally add, I think it was URL scan was our other enrichment provider. And again, these are the same sorts of tools you use in a traditional phishing workflow. So I'm going for parity with what we had before. And here I will search for IP address, primary domain, and URL. Okay, so I think we actually should be done. So all that I need to do now is have this thing run and see what happens. So I'm going to head over to an external system here and trigger a web request. It should hit our webhook. And what's just happened? Okay, for those of you not familiar, this is how Tines actions normally run. They run very quickly and they emit an output event. You'll see though the AI agent's a little different. It's running more slowly. And that's because internally it's going to be using all these tools. So let me tell you a bit about the tools for a moment. If I click on any of these tools here, you'll see that these are actually almost like embedded Tines actions. So this is a tool the AI can use. I can configure it in the sidebar. So for example, if I wanted to give it another input like this include summary, I'm going to say, yes, let's include the summary. I've now hard coded this argument, but the AI will fill out the email. So it'll dynamically use this tool and fill out the email address. This is a very, very simple but powerful way to give the entire power of the Tines platform to these tools. And as well as those product and template tools I mentioned, like those out-of-the-box integrations, you can also use any send to story as a tool. And that's a remarkably powerful way of sharing functionality. And you can even build custom tools. I won't go into this in the demo today, but these are groups. And this gives you the full canvas to build anything that our platform can do as a tool. Okay, let's head in now and take a look at how this is running. So if I open up the events panel, you'll see that we have an in progress run. Okay, so the agent is still running. Let's see what's happened here. What you're seeing in the middle is that internal monologue. I'll just give myself a bit more space here. All right, so we've given it the email. The AI agent starts to read it. I'm going to analyze this email for security threats, provide an assessment. And the first thing it actually does is before it uses those security tools we gave it, it just has a think. And what it's doing here is you can imagine this being like you as a human reading an email and saying, does this look legitimate? Okay, what's it seeing? Straight away, our agent is suspicious. It's seeing some phishing indicators just based off the content of the email. Urgency tactics, it's from a bank, kind of a weird looking domain. So straight away, before it's used any security tools, our agent is suspicious. Now it starts using those tools. It checks the reputation of domains. Let's have a look at what actually happens here. You can see the exact input and output of this tool call. There's that parameter we configured, include summary. It's getting back all this data. Looks like this is suspicious. We don't actually have to look at this data. This is really just for our audit log. The agent will summarize it for us. So it goes through, uses all these tools quite quickly. I think it's finished already. And finally, after it's fetched a bunch of that enrichment and a bunch of that ground truth, it thinks to itself again. And now it is combining that intuitive response and the ground truth it's fetched from the security tools. And it now has a very good understanding of what this is. Let's have a look at that report. It's a phishing attempt. And this is a fantastic write-up. This is very clear. It's readable, nice formatting. It's detailing in great detail why this is suspicious across so many axes. It's talking about some of the specific IOCs, and it's giving us recommendations. And I haven't taken this all the way to creating a case for the team to investigate, but that would just be me adding one more tool here, right? Add a tool to create a case. What's remarkable about this is how, number one, how quick it was to build, right? I just had to, I had the credentials for these set up, but otherwise you saw me do it totally from scratch. And the other thing that's amazing is that despite the simplicity of these instructions, how little information we gave it, this produces analysis that competes in quality with what you saw in the traditional workflow. So it's a comparable output based off something that was so quick to spin up. Now, again, there's upsides and downsides, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say that you should convert all phishing workflows to behave this way. You might prefer the high consistency of deterministic automation. But there's something interesting here in how quick it was to build. I want to run this one more time. So this time we're going to send an event through the email inbox. Let's try that out. And what you're going to see this time, email is arriving here in a totally different format, right? It's no longer that plain text email. It's now a structurally parsed email. And in a conventional deterministic automation, this would break the automation because it has an inconsistent structure. What you'll see with the agent is it didn't mind, right? Let's look at our completed run. Totally different shape. It was able to do roughly the same thing and analyze this email for security threats. So in addition to the speed of building and the power of this form of automation and the intelligence, there's also this ability for it to handle unanticipated edge cases or changes in context. Okay, we lost a bit of time, so I'm going to try and speed up a bit. I'm going to show you just very briefly an example of the chat agent. So again, when you drag on one of these AI agents, you can pick between task or chat mode. When I pick chat, it turns into something like a Times page. This becomes a web page that I can distribute to end users of various types, and I can configure. So here's one I made that's kind of a quick contrived example of an IT help desk. All right, so what we've got here is you are an IT help desk. Here's what you do. Create a case to track what the user needs if required. Now it has an initial message because this is a conversation with a user, and you have the ability to style this and present it. So this is kind of a white labeling, something you can add your own logo to. I've got an example logo, or add your own brand color to. And just like a task agent, you then configure it with a set of tools. Okay, so like I say, a bit of a contrived example here, but let me show you how this works. Here it is. Now you can put these in our page collections. So if I have a page collection here with maybe a book time off Times page, I can add my chat page to that collection. So here it is as an IT help desk. And why don't I just try a few examples here? So I'll say, hey, I just had a weird issue that broke my webinar for a moment. Is Google Chrome having a bad release? I don't know. I don't even know what my question is here. But you'll see the bot does its best with this bad question. And here in this particular example, it's being quite risk averse. It's saying, okay, this could affect business operations. Let me create a case to track this for you. And I'll say, you know what? Something else happened today. I got a weird SMS to my work phone from billing@securepaypal.com. So I'm hinting here at something that sounds much more serious. And this agent behind the scenes is using those tools. You can see it's creating a case. It's telling you a little bit about it. So the user is somewhat in the loop on what the agent is doing, adding to the user experience. But behind the scenes, the agent can be doing other things like creating a case or documenting. So again, in the interest of time, I'll move off this pretty fast, but this is a really interesting front end and user experience that you can have in front of your agents. I'm curious to see what it's been doing behind the scenes. So let's take a look at our case management system. And you can see here two that got created. So it created an issue for my Chrome webinar functionality, medium priority. And it created a case for my SMS phishing. And this has been set to critical, and the security team will be investigating this, I suppose. And to be clear, these cases that it's creating here in the inbuilt Times case management system, These are happening just through this tool usage. So you can connect whatever you want here. This could be on Slack, it could be on Jira, it could be whatever you want. Finally, I'll say, no, I didn't. All set here, can chat on Slack, because it's told me that the security team is going to reach out to me directly via Slack. And let's see what it does next. It's going to end the conversation, right? So it's giving me my case number, and the conversation has ended. And this is why it's on the diagram, because when this is finished, you can have downstream automation that then runs after that conversation achieved its objective. So again, very powerful because it taps into the full capabilities of our platform. All right. So far, I've shown you sort of two hypothetical thought experiments for what you could build. Next, I want to show you something real that we build and we depend on every day to run Tines. And it actually comes from our engineering team. So we've gone security, then IT, and now engineering. And this is an agent our engineering team built to help with code review. And it's interesting. I'm seeing some examples come in here in real time. So what are we looking at here? There's actually a few things going on. This whole left-hand side branch is like the beta version that the engineering team are working on for the next version of this agent. And this is the one that's up and running right now. And what it is an agent that helps when our engineers have a new change to our software, which is a pull request, this agent will leave comments on that pull request in GitHub, suggesting how the code could be better. And our team had actually been playing with some off-the-shelf products here, agent for X, agent for pull requests, and they found them generally really noisy, unreliable, and not specific to how we like to write code at times. And they struggled with those tools because they were such black boxes, they couldn't change how they behaved. So this was the team building agents in Tines, and so they thought, what better way for us to try out our own software? And this is what they built. So you were a software engineer, help the user improve their pull requests, and you can see a lot of really specific stuff here. I like this last one. Do not write a comment just to agree with or congratulate the author. We haven't got time for that. Or this piece. We've instituted a new testing practice, and we're letting the agent know that, and we're giving it some key insights. Another thing we noticed in those external tools was they never really understood the context of the code base. So what our engineers did here was they gave it a bunch of GitHub tools, including the ability to fetch files and fetch associated pull requests or associated comments. And this, you can see there's not that much to this, right? There's some bullet points in the system instructions, very similar to the agent I showed you before for phishing in some ways. And I want to now just show you an example of what it did. So this is a pull request from yesterday. And one of our engineers is changing some details of our infrastructure. And you can see, where it's gone? I think it's here. It's resolved because he actually took on the suggestion. But this is what the review bot did. It said, hey, this logic is inconsistent. You should use this other approach. And it even actually wrote the code and suggested a diff that the engineer could apply with one click. And he took that suggestion because it's a really good catch. And this little bot has become like an important member of our team. And it's all just powered by a totally customizable agent here in Tines. Okay, fantastic. I do want to show you one more before we get to questions. And this is going to be a little bit more of a fully featured example of how agents, I think, could apply to teams that are more like yours, and how they can work with other agents and also with humans on the team. Okay, so what we've got here is I've got an ability to simulate a suspicious login alert. And this is going to simulate a detection that has occurred for an employee in our organization. Let me go ahead and run that. And you're going to see some conventional deterministic workflow here that runs and produces a case in our case management system. So here is our case. Okay, it's created this medium priority case for a suspicious Okta authentication. And it's a pretty good job. It's given us an example of what's happened. Jennifer Smith has signed in from an unusual location in China. Here's her IP address. Here's the time. And she had some failed login attempts before she eventually succeeded. Now, if I'm a security analyst here in a security operations center, I've got a lot of work in front of me. I'm going to have to cross-reference all sorts of systems and investigate this. And every investigation is a bit different. So these things are often very hard to automate classically. Here we are automating it though. And here's how we're doing it. Firstly, we've got this first agent. And this agent listens for any new cases that get created. It has a quick filter here, a trigger to only focus on brand new cases. And then it's going to triage it. Okay. So again, we're seeing in concert some deterministic automation at the top, followed by some agentic automation. And let's have a look at what it's doing. So here we've got, compared with my phishing example, we've got a more fully featured runbook. This is like what you might give somebody working in a security operations center at level 1. Hey, here's what your responsibilities are. Here's how you carry out, here's how you recognize if an analysis is already done. Here's how we do analysis. Here are some guidelines. Here's how you should document what you discover. And we're then giving it the incoming alert. Okay, now this has a variety of security tools, the same sorts of tools that the human analyst might have. Let's take a look and see how it's running. So once again, I can see the in progress runs here. This one started 2 minutes ago. And you're seeing the same kind of shape. It starts off by having a quick think about what's happening and what it should do next. It then starts using those tools. Okay, let's look at the reputation of the IP address. Now let's look up the user. Who is Jennifer? Now, where should she be? Where do we expect her to be? All right, what's she been doing in Okta? This is the system that gave us the alert. Let's search all the logs for her and see what she's been doing. Let's additionally search another system, AWS, which is a system that she maybe has access to, and see if she's been up to anything there. And finally, after it's fetched all of that ground truth, let's take a look at what it's thinking. Okay, so it's built up a very rich picture of everything that's taken place. It now believes this is a serious security incident. So at this point, it's time to document what it's discovered. And you can see, first of all, I think because this is so serious, it's immediately updated the priority of this case. Again, we're using the Tynes case management system here, but you could use any one. And it's doing something super interesting. It's adding a bunch of remediation actions that we might want to take as a next step. And lastly, it's documenting everything it discovered in a case note. So let's head over here and have a look. And we can see that now this has been set to a high priority case, which makes sense. And we've got a beautiful summary, attack timeline, great detail of all the things she's done. Looks like she's been downloading files. This attacker has been accessing sensitive S3 buckets. This is looking like a really, really serious incident because it's an IP that's well known to be malicious, and it goes on. And so what's just happened? Okay, we're in our security operations center. A AI agent has done the first pass analysis, and it has proposed a bunch of remediation actions that we can now take. So I probably want to do all these things. I'm just going to pick the first one. What will I take? I'll say revoke all active sessions, just so that we can stem the flow. And when I press that run button, an interesting thing happens next. Agent number 2 kicks in. Okay, so this is a separate agent, also listening for an event. And this agent's job is to actually carry out that given remediation. Okay, so once again, it has its runbook. You're responsible for executing the remediation action. Here are the sorts of actions that we support. Here's what you do. You have to verify that it worked. You need to document exactly what step you took. Here's how we like to do that documentation. Again, the sort of clear instructions that you would give a human if you were asking them to do this kind of task. And once again, we can go in here and see how it's running. I think this is still ongoing. Okay, it's finished now actually, but it thought about what to do. It pulled the trigger on the correct action. It documented what it did. And we've got a little summary here in our audit log. But I can just go back to the case and I can see that this remediation action has been completed and it's been documented here on the case management system. And so my final comment on this is really just that this, I think, is what the future holds. It's not just buying an agent for X that does one thing, but thinking about how your company's workflows and thinking about how work flows through your company, right? So here, did we want the agent to actually go ahead and automatically remediate? Maybe we do in future. Or maybe we want what we did here, where we want a human in the loop between agent 1 and agent 2. We want a human to make that determination that we wanted to reset the password in Okta. But it's really up to you. This is the beauty and the flexibility of this system, is that I think, what we're seeing here is the ability to automate things that were previously impossible to automate, but also the flexibility for you to lay out the right process, the right connection of agent to agent or agent to human. And this is unlocking all sorts of automations that weren't possible before. Okay, so much more to get into. We've really just scratched the surface, but I am conscious of time. And I want to just, before we get to questions, if you're not a Tines customer at all yet, you can book a demo with our team. Head to tines.com/book-an-agents-demo to get started, or just reach out to us through any channel. We'd love to show you a personalized demonstration of how this could work for your organization. And then lastly, I think maybe best of all is join us for our boot camp later this month. This is going to be an instructor-led experience, but you won't just be following someone else's screen. You'll be hands-on. You'll have your own demo environment where you can build these agents yourself in real time with that instructor's help. So I think that will be a real highlight if you want to go deeper and really get your hands dirty. Okay, and with all of those technical difficulties and all those demos and slides, I think it's finally time, Hannah, if you're around, to take a couple of questions from the group.
Yes, Stephen, that was an excellent job. And as you were talking, so many questions were flying in. So let's just jump right into it. And I thought it would be good to start with, are there any plans for agents specific to certain use cases rather than a single overall agent? And I thought you could take us through our philosophy on that.
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to it a few times. There's a lot of companies out there who are building the agent for X or the agent for Y. We're taking a different attitude here, which is that the subtleties and complexities of your organization mean that you want to have flexibility. So we're not going to tell you that our agents can only do X, Y, or Z. However, we are going to demonstrate that they can do a lot of things. So one place I would encourage people to head is our library. That's tines.com/library. And there's actually an agent section in there where we have a bunch of the examples we looked at today and many more that show full instantiations of what you can build. But again, I would just point to our experience with that GitHub pull request agent. Something off the shelf that sort of works for all companies is never going to be as good as something that's really laser focused on your needs. So, consider those library examples a jumping off point. I would really encourage you all to think about what makes sense for your organization. And if we can help, we're always happy to jam on those ideas. So just reach out to us.
Yeah, thank you. This next one is a bit of a two-parter, but can you remind us of the types of what we're calling tools an agent can connect to? And then can tools be other time stories that they themselves have an AI agent action?
Yeah, totally. Like, I heard you like agents, so I put agents in your agents type thing. Absolutely. I went through it quite quickly, but the tools you give these agents have the full power of Tines. Number one, they can use that template library. So all of the off-the-shelf, out-of-the-box integrations we support, they can use those. Secondly, and to your question, they can use send to story. And send to story is how in Tines traditionally one workflow can invoke another one. These can do that as well. And they can also do something similar to groups. So just a set of actions that will execute comprising that tool. And between those three sorts of tools, that's everything the Tines platform can do. And so, yes, you can get very creative. So I think you hinted at this, but a send to story, that could call another agent. So we actually support natively an agent to agent type of communication. And the possibilities are really endless and infinite here.
Awesome. Next question is, I'll be interested to hear your take on this. Is there a way to ensure the AI agent's consistency in actions? This person said, I'm thinking, what if I like what the agent does, but would still prefer the deterministic automation? Could I export the AI agent action and convert it to old actions?
I love that. I love that question. I love that idea. We have had the same idea and the same urge, because you're exactly right. The agent, I think, can be a great way to discover how the automation should run. But if you find a great solution for that, you might want to lock it in and make it deterministic. So this is something we're thinking about. Those who are familiar with our workbench feature, you might remember there's a way you can go from a workbench conversation to a story. And so I'm very excited about doing something similar with agents, where you could go from a set of agent story runs and then convert that to a deterministic story. So you can lock in or make consistent that behavior. And I think it's a great point, because, doing what I did in that fishing example and going 100% agentic, there's risks to that, right? You do lose some of that consistency. So I think that kind of question where you're being thoughtful about agentic versus deterministic is exactly the right way to think about it.
Yeah, and I think this one might be following up on that, but how do agents handle errors or failed LLM outputs?
So we have a pretty rich set of error handling features in Tines, whether that's monitoring for error responses or retrying failed HTTP requests or diverting failed attempts to different paths. Because agents are on the diagram, they support all of that. So it's very specific to the exact type of error you're talking about. Like it could be an error inside a tool that the AI agent uses, or it could be an error at the language model level itself. But the features I described there, can be used to mitigate or recover from all of those sorts of errors.
And then I just want to take a step back first. We were talking about AI models. Can you just remind the group what AI models are available that people can connect to, and can they host their own model within self-hosted tenant?
Yes, absolutely. I should say that everything you saw today is available for self-hosted customers as well as cloud. Now, when it comes to our cloud and our default built-in language models, we love the Anthropic Claude family of models. So you will find Claude Sonnet, I think 3.7 and 4 built in, as well as some smaller, faster models like Claude Haiku, Amazon Nova, and a few others. So we have good model choice in our default offering. Again, including Claude Sonnet 4, which in my estimation is one of the very best models there's ever been, especially for these sorts of use cases. But if you bring your own model, and bring your own model again applies to our cloud customers, also self-hosted customers, then you can do whatever you want. So if you want to bring OpenAI models, or if you want to bring Gemini models from Google, or open source models like Llama, we have at this point, I think, entire coverage for at least any model that the average person is likely to want to use.
Thank you. Someone else was wondering, how can I control the think time of an agent or the amount of data it can use in its context?
So I'll address the data first, and then I'll talk about think time. So you're very in control of what data gets passed to the agent. So it can see only what you put inside that prompt. So if your agent is downstream of a lot of pre-processing steps, and maybe those steps have fetched huge amounts of data, by default, the agent won't see that data. It will just see what you explicitly give it. So first of all, you're in total control there. Now, where it gets interesting is if you give the agent a lot of tools, and if it has to use huge numbers of tools, that data will eventually fill up the context window. So this is, I think, where our approach to tools is powerful, because you can, in each of those tools, you can use Tines features to control their outputs, right? So let's say that you're fetching data from Snowflake, and the agent needs to refer to that data as it runs. Perhaps too much is coming back, and you could filter the output and reduce the amount such that it doesn't overwhelm the agent with too much data. So again, very happy that we've given the full power of our platform. We've been dealing with these sorts of file size and data control issues for a long time in Tines, and we have the requisite feature set to tackle them here for agents.
Awesome.
And I think I just saw a question come in there, which is really relevant to our last. So the question was around, can you allow selecting different models from different vendors? Yes. So inside the AI agent action, you can control exactly which model from your available set will be used. And this is great because sometimes you want the agent to be very fast. Other times you want it to be as smart and as careful as possible. I think actually I didn't address the think time question. So there's a few different versions of thinking. We have the think tool that you might have seen if you were eagle-eyed, and that's something that we let our agents do by default, where they can kind of stop and have a deeper think. Right now, that's up to the agent, but we are going to make that tool something that you can turn on or off. Additionally, there are reasoning models. So if you plug in models like O3, for example, from OpenAI, you can have the ability in those APIs to control the amount of reasoning you want to occur. So in general, we're not here to wrap the AI model too much and to make our own determinations. We're going to let you use those AI models and control the parameters exactly as you want to. We're here to help you deploy them.
Awesome, thank you. So I wanted to get into the chatbot. And does everyone need a license to be able to use the chatbot feature? For example, we add a chatbot to Slack. Does every user need a license to be able to use the bot?
No, is the good news. So in the vast majority of customer cases, we don't actually sell Tines by number of seats. So you can add more users to the platform for what it's worth usually without incurring additional fees. However, we tend to differentiate between tenant users and end users. So your tenant users are people probably on your immediate team, people who know or care what Tines is. And your end users might represent those people you're servicing in the broader organization. So because those people don't log into Tines, they don't consume seats, even if we did it that way. And that goes for people in Slack. It goes for people using Tines pages. It goes for folks using these new chat pages. And these chat pages will be distributable in the same way as Tines pages. So you can make them available to people in a certain SSO group. You'll be able to make them available to perhaps the entire public in certain very specific use cases. Or you can lock it down to people who are specifically members of the Tines tenant. And in terms of, I think the Slack point is a great question. In the demo, I showed you the GitHub agent. The natural place for that GitHub agent to talk to users is GitHub, obviously, right? We didn't want those pull request reviewers to have to go to a special web page to talk to the agent. They want to just see it right there. And so you can get pretty far by just giving the agent the correct tools. So there's ways to do it for Slack, for Teams, any other venue that you may want to chat with those users. You don't have to use our chat agent functionality for that. You can do it as a task, and it can use a tool to reach the users where you want to talk to them.
Awesome, thank you. Wanted to ask a fun question. What has been the greatest in the field example you've seen where an agent may have had a massive mess up? And I think I heard from our engineers we may have had a funny one with the PR bot.
I might not be in the loop on the specific anecdote you're referring to. So I want to know. Can you tell me what it was, Anna?
Well, I think what they're saying is that with the PR bot we had that you showed, it was giving suggestions for different reviews to put in that the team can look at, and it can hallucinate, as we know AI can do, and it gave them. I don't have the specifics. I wasn't sure if you did, but it gave them a funny response to a PR request. So I don't know if you've heard yourself any instances or you've come across that the agent's gone a little funny.
Hallucination is a really interesting topic, and it's funny. So for anyone not familiar, you probably all are, but hallucinations are where an AI model imagines something that it thinks to be true, but it totally made it up. And it's not making it up on purpose. It thinks it's remembering it. It's a little bit like us as humans. If you try and remember something that happened maybe a few years ago, your memory might contain some false information. And interestingly, hallucinations have become less of an issue over time as models have got smarter. They are less prone to this problem. And particularly when you can give the model ground truth, when you can actually fetch live data from your enterprise systems and data sources, that massively mitigates hallucinations. So typically when I see them these days, it's because you've misconfigured a tool. So if you, for example, we give it a tool to search Snowflake for some ground truth context, but there's an issue and we're actually returning back 0 data. But we're asking it a question, assuming that it would have data. In those sorts of boundary conditions and edge cases, that's when I think hallucination tends to happen now. And so usually it's an indication that something's actually totally broken, totally missing. I'm very glad to say that when you are providing it with up-to-date, access to those proprietary systems, access to the latest and greatest data from your systems, it's really not that much of an issue anymore at all. So I'll have to find out exactly what that comedic example from the GitHub review bot was, but I wonder if it might have been that. It might have been a misconfiguration where it didn't have that surrounding context and had to just gamble and make something up.
Yeah. So Stephen, I have one more question for you. And I do want to address, we have so many awesome questions in here by everyone. So thank you so much. Perhaps we can pull these together in a blog format for everyone to check out, because the conversation about agents can just keep going. But one last question. Is there a certain skill level required to configure and maintain an agent effectively in Tines?
It's a great question. I mean, we've always aspired for Tines to be a platform that all sorts of people can use. So we are very proud to welcome, quote unquote, non-technical users to Tines. And some of our very, very, very best Tines builders are, people who don't know how to write code, for example. I think that agents, if anything, lower the bar of entry. They make it possible for more people to contribute, because after all, writing advice, writing instructions in the form of text is something we do in all of our roles. That's how we communicate with others. So it's more like that, and that makes it a more straightforward and inclusive process. So, there still is skill, for example, thinking about which system to use, or being a good systems thinker. I think those will continue to be important attributes for our best builders. I often like to say, if you're the kind of person who's great at a tool like Excel, if you're detail oriented and a good systems thinker, then I always think Tines could be a good fit for you. And yeah, again, agents, if anything, have just broadened the set of people. So I know we've hit time. I just want to finally say thank you all for tuning in. I know we had some fun technical difficulties there in the middle. Loved Hannah's idea to distribute some of the Q&A that we didn't get to. So we'll see if we can do that after the fact. But again, thank you for tuning in, and can't wait to hear your feedback on this new feature and to see what you all build.